The Triggered Project presents.
What does that mean for me if I need help that way? And who am I going to ask? And who am I going to talk to? And where am I going to go?
You need to understand what's going on in your community. You need to understand what it's like to take the bus in your community and what you don't have access to.
There's such a fear of actually trying to face the hardest thing that you've ever had to face because you're not sure what else is going to come with it.
Being triggered, it sort of never goes away.
Triggered is a buzzword, and the kids have picked up on it. Yo, the way you talking to me right now, yo, you got me mad triggered. I need to talk to the nurse.
We're really not meant to have lasted as long as we have.
No, you were supposed to mess this up a long time ago.
Y'all can't see me, but straight side eye right now.
This is Living a Triggered Life.
For more information on the Living a Triggered Life podcast, go to www.triggered1.com.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Museum of Science Boston and our very special live taping of the Living a Triggered Life podcast. I'm James Monroe. I'm the producer of adult programs and theater experiences here at the museum, and I'm really honored to kick off this incredible evening. I'm thrilled to be standing here in front of a live in-person audience here in Connors Theater. Yes, give yourselves a hand. It's wonderful to have you back with us. We do not take it for granted. We're also live streaming tonight out to a virtual audience who are watching with us on YouTube. So a huge hello to our digital friends. Thank you for tuning in from afar. Tonight is really special. We're thrilled to have back with us our friends from the Triggered Project. We did our first live Living a Triggered Life podcast event in the fall. And tonight I'm thrilled to have our friends and the co-creators and co-hosts of the podcast back, Keith and Roxann Maskell. Over the past year, we've really been able to develop a strong and deep relationship with both of them, and it's one of the most important to our team here at the museum. So we thank them for allowing us to be a very, very, very small part of all the incredible work that they're doing across the country. We are also honored to have with us tonight via virtual live stream another very special guest, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She is waiting in the wings to come out onto the quote-unquote virtual stage, and I'm going to let Keith and Roxann formally introduce her, though she needs no introduction. But I just want to start tonight off with a huge thank you to the Congresswoman and her entire team for giving us time tonight and being here and sharing. It's truly an honor to have you with us. And how this is going to work tonight, after the conversation with Keith and Roxann and the Congresswoman, we're going to say goodnight to Congresswoman Pressley, and then there's going to be a Q&A with Keith and Roxann where all of you can submit questions. So if you have a question for them at any time, all you have to do is pull out those smartphones, whether you're here with us in person or watching at home, and go to slido.com and enter the code TRIGGEREDLIFE, all one word, just as it appears on the screen behind me. And then after the formal program here, if you are with us on site, we invite you to a reception one level down in the Blue Wing. The DJ will be spinning again, and Keith and Roxann will be out there. They want to chat with you, so make sure you stick around and continue the evening with us. I need to thank our friends from the Lowell Institute for their ongoing support of the adult programming. Without them, we would not be here tonight, so a huge thank you to everyone at the Lowell Institute. But now, it is my extreme pleasure to welcome out your co-hosts, my dear friends, Keith and Roxann Maskell.
Keith and Roxann, presented by the Triggered Project.
Find out more information about the Triggered Project, go to www.triggered1.com.
Welcome to Living a Triggered Life podcast with Keith Maskell,
Roxann Maskell,
and we are live right now at the Museum of Science in Boston, Massachusetts. We are so excited to be back for our second live. Shout out to James Monroe,
yes,
for being able to put this all together, and the technical team here. You all really have taken such good care of us, and we so appreciate it. But wow, Rox, this is exciting. This is exciting. And you're looking wonderful tonight, by the way. I gotta tell you that.
You're looking all right yourself.
Wow. This is a good moment, Rox.
I know. Wait, you're making me misty. I'm starting to get emotional.
Okay, I don't need you to get emotional yet. We have plenty of time for that.
I know. Well, we haven't even started. I'm already getting emotional.
That's okay. But we have a really special guest. Very special guest tonight. We are so honored to have And I say my Congresswoman, our Congresswoman, Ayanna Pressley in the house tonight. We want to welcome you. How are you, Congresswoman? It is so great to have you. It's so great to see you. Yes. Oh my God, we are just. This is just such a blessing to have you here. But what we usually do is we just do a quick check-in to start out. So I usually say how I'm doing, and then I'll ask Roxann, and then we'll check in with you really quickly. Then we'll tell you why we wanted to talk to you, and then we'll jump right into the questions. How's that sound?
Let's go.
All right, beautiful. I'm doing okay today. A little stressed, which happens when you try to put together a podcast and things like that. My step and repeat didn't come today, and so I was a little upset about that. But you know what? I went to my self-care. I said, you know what? This is such a blessing of what's happening. Just let that go. Went out and shot some hoops. Felt pretty good about that. Did some meditation. Checked in with a friend who had just been injured a little bit and stuff. So I wanted to make sure that I was giving some energy to him, and then just kind of settled into what was going to happen this evening, and really just turned around whatever direction that I was this morning. So I'm feeling blessed right now. So Rox, what's up, Rox?
I'm still decompressing Mother's Day. My mama had to make it extra, but not special. I mean, that's what happens sometimes, right? It's the holidays that bring the worst out in us sometimes. Yeah. When we make an effort to show up and show out and be there for them, and then, they just don't know how to manage those emotions. Yeah. So I was pretty sick for a couple of days, and it was the stress on me and tired, trying to do too much. And then today I woke up and was like, it's a new day. I'm ready. And then I thought about what we were doing tonight, and I was like, I'm really ready. Very ready. Because this is the best part of the things that I do all day. Yeah. Doing this work, this is the real work. Connecting with people, this is the work. Giving space to people to talk about what they don't get to talk about, if they choose. Yeah. So I'm good.
Yeah, thank you. So, Congresswoman, how are you today? How you doing?
Yeah, well, I actually, yesterday was a very depleting day. There was a vote taken in the Senate regarding bodily autonomy and reproductive freedom, and that was actually a bill that I'm a co-lead for, so that was my legislation. And I was just feeling the weight of just a myriad of sort of intersectional legislative oppression. Yeah. And, look, I seek to do the work of liberation of Black people and all marginalized people, but centering Black women for a moment, given the history of medical apartheid on our bodies, forced sterilizations, hysterectomies, highest maternal morbidity in the country. Right. And now that we could be in a situation and circumstance of forced birth. And it just seems that our bodies and the bodies of Black women in particular are just always being policed, criminalized, vilified, in some way. And so I felt a real erasure yesterday. And today, I feel very seen and very centered, in large part because I had this to look forward to. Yeah. But also because so many people today were speaking life into me and were offering me affirmation and restoration. And that they expressed gratitude for the fight that I put up.
Right.
And so that felt good.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And the reason why we wanted to talk to you, just because, like, you're always just authentic. I've watched you talk to so many people, and everybody's important. That's how it seems. Like you're so genuine. So it's important. And after our live, I said to James, if we could talk to the Congresswoman, I want to talk to her. And for me, I always felt when seeing you, just the positive energy. You don't have to say anything to anybody, but your positive energy gives life to people. You know what I'm saying? And I felt like at certain points
that's very generous. I'm just a reflection of y'all. That's honestly.
You're a little bit more than a reflection of us.
Yeah. Right. No, we keep it authentic.
Yes.
And you never know, like, just saying hi to somebody means a lot to people. You know what I'm saying? And so just the fact of being somewhere or being a Nubian, and I love that mug, by the way. Love that mug. Love that mug.
And that's that on that.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Just the fact that, that happens, and I see the effect of you just saying hi to someone. And, so that's just important for me to have you here as a voice of the people, and but Rox, kick it.
Yeah, I wanted to say a little bit about why I wanted to speak to you, and you always say you remember, and I have this little voice inside of me that says, no, you don't. All the time, but I have to beat that voice down. But I met you at the Commonwealth seminar, and this was I don't know how many years ago. And every single time that I've seen you after that, you're like, no, I know who you are. And no matter how many times you say it, I'm like, no, you don't. You don't know me. And that's just a little voice inside of me. And that's what happens to us. That's part of trauma, right? That we don't believe that people really see us. And that's why I was so excited about having you here with us. Besides the podcast is so special to me in my life, there's something about your eyes that I really do believe that I'm seen in the world. And there's so many moments of my life where I feel invisible. And that's what trauma does. Right? Because the trauma experiences that I've had, because I didn't feel protected or I wasn't protected, made me feel invisible.
Right.
All the time.
That's right.
And so when I see you and you're like, I know who you are, I'm like, really? Because I've felt so invisible throughout my whole life. And that's why I wanted to have you here in this special moment with us. Because I'm always feeling seen. No matter how much I want to say no, your eyes always tell me yes. I see you, sister. And I love that about you. To the fact that I don't think I told you this, Keith. I really wanted to move in Cambridge so that we could be in her district.
No, you did talk to me about that. You did talk to me about that, for sure.
I really thought about it.
No, for sure,
for sure. Yeah.
Go.
First of all, I received all of that, and I'll tell you why I remember you. And I actually think I thought the last time that we were in each other's proximity was in Cambridge, but I could be wrong about that. But that's what I thought. But my recollection of you has nothing to do with politics. You're a rare person who, when you have asked how I am doing, I believed you were really asking me. And I don't know if you all know that, sort of in a perfunctory way, people will ask you that question all the time, right? Yeah. But, there's some people just in the inflection with which they ask the question, you can feel yourself breaking because you know it is coming from like a deeply authentic place, and all the sort of canned, perfunctory responses you gave the whole day, that it's not going to fly with this person. So that's actually how I emotionally remember you. So
Wow.
Does that prove that I know who you are? Okay.
Yes.
And every time.
Somebody in that room better co-sign.
Look, we appreciate that. Roxann doesn't get that a lot, but Roxann, let's get into these questions.
Yes.
So,
I'm ready.
follow up with that, babe. Right.
Tell us why you wanted to be here.
Yeah, I wanted to be here because I'm really trying to challenge us, those of us who our whole identity has been defined by the resistance and being warriors and all of these things, to be as radical and bold about our joy and our healing as we are about the work of resistance. And I remember in 2018, once I was elected to Congress, I had a ceremonial swearing in community, because I wanted to make the point that, this is symbiotic. I'm governing cooperatively, and I'm not going to be the only one taking an oath. You're going to take an oath with me.
Right.
And I co-authored this pledge. And one edict of this community pledge, which 400 people strong at Roxbury Community College took with me, was I will inform joy. Because joy is an act of resistance. And I've actually amended that now, because I think that's part of the problem. When folks say you can't pour from an empty cup, they're still saying do the work of restoration so you can continue to labor. And what I'm trying to get folks to give ourselves permission to be unapologetically is just to be.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't need to, when people even talk about self-care, you need to do self-care so you can keep doing the work.
Right.
Everything is about labor, utility. It's not about being. All the messages that I got as a child from my mother was about the armor I needed to put on to navigate, to negotiate, to handle aggression, microaggressions, hostilities, toxicity. It was all about armor. Nobody ever talked to me about joy.
Right.
Nobody ever talked to me about healing. And so the fact that you created this space, and the last thing I'll say about the two of you is that I do believe that Black love is a revolutionary and radical act. And we know that in that Martin and Coretta met in the Massachusetts 7th in Roxbury.
Right.
And, many people define her as his wife, but she was a liberator in her own right. She was an architect of this movement, and it would not have been birthed were it not for their radical Black love.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to endorse what you two are doing and the space that you've created.
Yes. Thank you so much for all that. And that's one thing that some people don't talk about with this podcast is about Black love, right? And the importance of talking about not just the best part of it, but the other parts that need work. And that's one thing that was important to us, which started this podcast, is me as a survivor, and how does it affect our relationship, right? How do we figure it out? And being triggered, that's not something that our parents talk to us about either, right? How do we figure it out? And I've been lucky just to have this woman, stand next to me, and push me behind and pull me forward sometimes. And if we can help people by telling our story, then that's exactly what we're going to do. And we will be unapologetic about it. So thank you with everything that you just said. But that leads into the second question is, as a survivor, how has your trauma influenced and affected your work as a public official?
Well, it influences everything about me and my worldview. And so, in turn, how I movement build, how I community build, how I legislate. Roxann was talking about invisibility. I think that is the unique dichotomy of the marginalized existence, especially for Black folk, especially for Black women. We have this dichotomy of being hyper visible and invisible all at the same time.
Right.
So we're visible enough to be criminalized and policed, but we're invisible enough to be slowly dying, given a host of things, everything, again, from the maternal morbidity crisis or the weight of student debt or, there not being space held for our healing or our justice, given the number of us who are survivors of abuse.
Right.
I'm a survivor of a decade of childhood sexual abuse and also a survivor of campus sexual assault. And so I certainly do center survivors' justice in my policy work. And that for me ranges from, fighting for an investment in those social-emotional wellness supports to acknowledge what our children need. Childhood trauma is growing. I think it is in the midst of its own pandemic.
Yes.
We already know what they were carrying in their emotional backpacks as they crossed into learning communities pre-pandemic. And it is frightening, the increase in anxiety and depression and suicide ideation. So I do a lot of work legislatively around childhood trauma. In fact, that convened the first ever congressional hearing on childhood trauma. So those socio-emotional investments and supports within our learning communities, and also in our community health centers, and then again, shining a light on the issue using my power of convening and things like a committee hearing. Also for survivors of big events, I have like natural disasters, domestic terrorism, things in that way. And then finally, I'll just say surviving family members of homicide victims.
Yes.
There's a lot of work that I do in that space, and we know that 1 in 4 Black and brown people have lost a loved one to gun violence. We know for every person that we're robbed of, they weren't lost. So you didn't say you lost someone. We were robbed. Of every loved one that we're robbed of, that impacts a minimum of 10 people. So we're talking about 120 to 130,000 new survivors, surviving family members of homicide victims every year. And, we know that trauma manifests in many ways. There's primary trauma, there's secondary trauma. And so what I'm fighting for is just investments, as I said at the Peace Walk on Mother's Day. Community is possible if we build it, peace is possible if we work for it, and healing is possible if we invest in it.
Yes.
So as a survivor, I'm centering survivors' justice in all of my work, whether it's survivors of sexual assault or addressing childhood trauma or natural disasters or disruptive events, or whether it's surviving family members of homicide victims. But I'm also trying to prevent trauma.
Of course.
So I consider, when I say I'm a survivor, it's interesting now that I say that, and because I'm bald, people will think I'm a survivor of cancer, so I'm having to figure out new verbiage. Look, my father was incarcerated for 14 years. I think I'm a survivor of mass incarceration. My mother, not at the hands of my father, but my mother was a survivor of domestic violence, of incest, and also of rape, So trauma is intergenerational. So I define myself as a survivor in every way when it comes to trauma, both primary and secondary.
Yes. No, thank you for that. And, thank you for sharing. And, I honor your pace of healing. And I honor the fact that you're a thriver. And sometimes we talk about intergenerational trauma, but sometimes we don't talk about the intergenerational thrivers that we've become because of that trauma. And you're a clear example of that. So, no, thank you for that. That was awesome. And so
what I like about what you said just now, what you both said, is that it's not enough to remain in the place of surviving, which is what you say all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's about thriving.
Yes.
Right? The trauma that Black and brown people have endured over generations has taught us how to survive. But we need to move into the thriving game.
Yeah.
And that's what the two of you are talking about primarily,
Right.
is thriving.
Yeah.
And that is part of that healing, and that's part of like what we know how to do, flip the script.
Right.
Can I say something about that for a moment?
Yeah,
Listen,
sure.
Listen, you don't need to ask.
No, like I said, we're respectful of the format and also our time.
thank you. Right.
But this is important. Policy is my love language. And the reason why policy is my love language is because every hurt and harm is one that has been legislated. It was codified.
Right.
So I believe if we can legislate hurt and harm, then we can legislate healing, we can legislate justice, we can legislate equity.
Yes.
But how do we do that effectively?
Right.
We have to stay in proximity to it. Because it's only by staying close to it that you understand how intersectional it is, how complex, the nuance. And then what I always want to do is then work with those most impacted
Right.
to develop the best solutions. The people closest to the pain should be closest to the power, driving and informing the policy making.
Yes.
And the last thing that I would say on this, because you brought up thriving. A couple of weeks ago, I was meeting with some folks, someone who had left politics, and I said, what is it like on the other side? And they said, I went from a life of obligation to a life of desire. And I said, well, that is a privilege, but one that everyone deserves. So when I think desire, I think imagination.
Right.
And so as a policymaker, here's the shift that I was talking with some of my sisters in the work and the birthing movement as we're doing maternal justice work. And they said, I'm not going to do one more panel to talk about the statistical odds of why Black women are more likely to die in childbirth. Instead, I'm going to talk about imagine a world where Black birthing people feel safe, sacred, and loved. Do you see the switch there?
Yes.
But that's why I'm taking time for this, because when we're doing this work, we can perpetuate trauma because culturally we've been told that in order for you to be seen and centered, you have to relive and weaponize your trauma.
Yes.
Right.
And so you got in to do this work as a liberator and to be a healer.
Right.
And you're like, why am I so heavy? Because we're not giving ourselves permission for the imagination, for the desire, for the thriving part. So let's not sit in the deficit and the data. Let's sit in the dream.
Right.
And that's how we have to organize and legislate.
Right. Right. No. That's it. I'm surprised that people aren't clapping.
I think they forgot. They got mesmerized by the words and the language.
Maybe I'm not making it plain. So.
No. I mean,
No. You're dropping that science.
We're
at the Museum of Science, mind you. You dropping it.
Right. People ask like, why are you at this? Why are you at the Museum of Science? Like, because that's social science. What we were just talking about.
Yes.
That was social science at its best.
And we keep saying we're talking about the neurobiology, neuroscience of the brain.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we just had, which was awesome. But Rox, we're gonna move to a different question because the Congresswoman answered that one. So the next question we're gonna get into is you've often spoken about America's growing trauma crisis, and how has the last 2 years contributed to that?
Yeah, I mean, again, oppression, trauma, it's intersectional, and we've just been hit by an onslaught of it. It's been unrelenting.
Right.
So just our collective loss and grief. Today we hit the 1 million marker. I mean, it's crazy that this loss of life has been so normalized for us that you can just see on a little ticker tape on the screen, 1 million lives.
Right.
And people just sort of keep moving. But we have to keep moving, but we can't normalize that kind of loss and suffering. So we've lost parents and siblings and cousins and teachers and nurses and aunties and grandpapas. Right. So many of us have had to say goodbye to loved ones through a screen. I survived an insurrection at my workplace.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So we have seen what happens with inaction and inertia, insurrection.
Right.
I'm upset that it took an insurrection, a violent white mob erecting nooses on the west lawn of the Capitol, wearing anti-Semitic T-shirts and carrying Confederate flags, for many to realize for the first time that white supremacy is a threat to everyone.
Right.
To everyone who calls this country home and to our democracy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when they put scaffolding up all around the building, and now we have to go through metal detectors to go on the floor and all these things, and people ask me, do you feel safer? I said, I'm a black woman in America.
Right.
I'm not concerned about the safety of people exclusively at this building.
Right.
I want to feel safe in this country.
Right.
So this is, we have to, root out and, disrupt white supremacy. So it's the pandemic, it's an emboldened white supremacy, anti-black, Asian, immigrant sentiment, Islamophobia, gun violence, police brutality. It's been a lot. Yeah. So all of that has contributed to our trauma, and that is why I'm championing the need for a trauma-informed recovery.
Right.
And like I said, healing is possible if we invest in it. Yes. And all of my policies center survivors of every form of trauma and seek to advance policy that's trauma-informed.
Right.
We need to have a trauma-informed recovery.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I think you hit it right on the head. And I think, Roxann, you see this, where you work at Brandeis, and I see the effects also when I go into schools, and I'm talking with students, and it takes so much for them just to show up. Just to walk through that door, and then have to deal with the anxiety of being around people, to learn how to actually be social again. And so many of them have stopped breathing. And that's the first thing that I say to them as we do some monologue work is breathe. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, because we've been holding our breath for the last 2 years. And it is such an important reminder for us, as you said in the beginning, was for us to just be. But the second part of that is for us to just breathe. Take a moment and just be and breathe, and really just take time to let that oxygen through our bodies, because it's just been so much that we haven't done. Right, Rox?
I think we don't know how to do it anymore. Yeah. Like, we're not even cognizant when we're not breathing. And I just want to go back because a little bit. So I was just thinking about, in deep thought here, about throughout the pandemic, I worked a lot on the front lines. And I was thinking about what you were saying about maternal health and some of the other things you were saying. And I was thinking back to the pandemic really brought out my ability to say, and sorry, I even do this in session, I swear, sorry, I apologize. But to bring out whatever the hell I want to say. And I come home and I tell Keith, and I find myself at a maternity rounds, and I started saying to doctors and nurses and midwives, please stop putting in consults for social workers when there are primarily Black and brown women. I'm tired. You're targeting them, and I want you to stop. And sometimes they will get up on me, up underneath me, because they are like forcing me to go talk to Black and brown women. And I will say, she said no, and she has a right to self-determine. Leave her alone. Yeah. And, I started reminiscing all these moments in time of these experiences, including at Brandeis, and talking about how my white colleagues are not showing up for my black and brown students and calling them out. If you're not going to show up for my students, don't see them. I will see all of them if I have to. And sometimes we need to be able to stand up and just stand up and speak. And if we're not breathing, we're not speaking. Right. And sometimes we get so distracted by everything that's going on, we forget that sometimes we're not speaking because we forget how to breathe. And I've had these moments where I'm like, I don't care. What are y'all going to do? Because no one else is going to show up. I don't care. I'm not being disrespectful, but you will respect the people that look like me.
Right.
Thank you.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Roxann. It's so funny because I feel like sometimes, that you're the clinical play-by-play person of this podcast, kind of like a lead analyst for a sports show, and it's just so brilliant. And I'm like, how could Tom Brady get $23 million? Because you should get double that for the work that you do on this podcast. It's amazing. But we only have a couple minutes left. But I want to make sure to ask this question of, do you have any advice for survivors who are navigating relationships and how they show up in the world?
You asked me the hardest question with 3 minutes or whatever it is left. Okay.
No, it was the last. But you know what though?
You.
Actually, but you know what?
You said it wasn't me.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do what a lot of elected officials do is I'm gonna answer the question I want to.
No, that's
not the way you asked.
To be honest with you, that's what I expected you to do. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer the question I want to. Okay.
No, thank you for that.
Hopefully this will speak to something. Keith, but I want to say what you did was so important there, and I'm sure you do this in your private life as well, and it's so generous that you all are willing to do this publicly. And that is as a partner to hold space for Black woman rage.
Yes.
Because we are talked out of our pain all the time, right? We can go to healthcare. We can go to healthcare providers. They might think we're drug seeking. We're in birth. They don't believe our pain is as bad as it is, right? So we're always being talked out of our pain. But what I want to make it clear, it's not just by white folks, because the burden of white supremacy is Black folks will do that to you too, right? So we're always being talked out of our pain.
Right.
And why I chose my husband, who I call my Black Diamond, Conan Harris, is because, let me try not to get emotional here about it, he was the first person who was angry for me. After decades of trauma, being told to pray it away, or shame that was projected onto me because of fractures created in my family. When I became the villain, and I was the one who was abused. But because of the fractures it created in my family, because it was familial abuse, one, there's shame in talking about it. It's because it is intra-family. And then two, when after enduring and overcoming a decade of that and then being raped in college, you really start thinking, I must just have something on my forehead. I mean, I just thought this was my lot in life. Because every corner of my life that I was sent to, people that were supposed to care for me and protect me and love me violated me. And then I did a lot of self-sabotage of some good men who wanted to love me because trauma was the third person in that relationship. And so then I met my husband, who I think might be the first person outside of my mother, may she rest in peace and power, who saw me fully.
Right. Right.
And he was a safe place for me to fall. He allowed me to be delicate and fragile. I did not. He calls me his warrior in heels, but that's not what he leads with.
Right.
And he got mad for me.
Right.
And I needed that.
Right.
And it made me feel like what happened to me was unacceptable and that it mattered. And so that which my husband afforded me, that gift, is the same gift that I seek to give to everyone.
Right.
And to do that using the power of my platform, the power of convening, the power of the pen as a legislator, to say, you deserve to show up in the world fully, authentically, unapologetically as you are, without fear, without discrimination, without violence.
Right.
And we are all survivors of something.
That's right.
And you deserve to be seen and centered.
Yes.
And I'm done. So I don't know if that answers any question.
No. You look that.
It doesn't matter what the question was. That answer was fantastic.
No. Thank you.
And thank you
so
that.
much. I know we're about to wrap up here, but like everything you said is everything that happened here. Everything that happened here, and that was the one thing that I'll make a comment that Roxann had a lot of rage, right? I never stifled that rage at all. And yes, I was angry for her, but I allow her to be in the space that she needs to be and let her work through that to get to the loving, right? Because that's important, right? That's important because we become a hardened shell sometimes as survivors when we've been hurt. And I told her, two things I told her. One, I will never not allow you to be your 100% authentic self, right? Even by her t-shirt today. Two, I will never as a man get in the way of what you want to do in your life. There will never ever be a man. A man will never step in the way of everything that you want to be. And two things that I told her, but we got to wrap up. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Pressley, for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Just for being your authentic self and kicking it with us. We really appreciate your time. We know you have to go, so thank you for that heart. We have the heart back.
Yes.
We're gonna let you go. We're gonna continue on, but we want to say goodbye. Everybody in the audience, you can say goodbye. Say goodbye.
I'm so jealous. Y'all get to keep going and being together.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. But I mean, my goodness, right?
Man,
like
I'm ready to just walk off the stage. We don't have to do anything else.
Yeah, but we can't. We got more to do. We got more to do. But I think that
she is fantastic.
She is
just a fantastic human being.
Yes.
Like forget being a legislator. That's great.
No.
But my God, she's such a wonderful human being.
Right. And so, I mean, but here's what just happened. She did what she always does. She showed up as her authentic self. Always, right? And we can't take that for granted because that's not something that happens, right? That's why people talk about, you and I talk about the Congresswoman, who I'm like, there's only one to me.
Right. Recognize.
Right?
Yes.
And we just saw that. But the one thing that she said that I think that, that resonated with me, of course, everything she said, but the fact that it just reminded me of that I've always been angry for you. Mm-hmm. Always. Mm-hmm. Always. But the thing about it is you've always been angry for me. Mm-hmm. And
actually, I've been willing to use my rage for you and fight people.
Right.
Even though you told me you can't do that, but
no, that's that. I mean, y'all listen to the podcast, you understand that sometimes
South Bronx,
the South Bronx comes out, one time with someone who got mad, she was getting mad at or whatever, someone being crazy, and she was doing this motion to somebody. Someone said, "You better get your girl," and I said, "Why? She ain't mad at me."
Facts, all facts.
So but as soon as it was a movement, I had to step in really quickly. But Roxann, some people asked some questions.
That's wonderful. I'm ready.
There's some questions. Let's see what we have. And someone asked really quickly, I'm going to skip over the first one, we'll get back to it. How do you remain hopeful? Genuinely hopeful. In general, I believe with, like being a survivor and things like that. Do you want to take that or you want me to take it?
I'll say one thing about it and then maybe you'll follow up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have learned to believe that this man unconditionally loves me. And he does that in so many different ways. But it's not just about the doing, it's about the consistency. Consistency is everything for me because I'm constantly in my head. Like when you heard me say to the Congresswoman about, I'm always like, you don't remember me, stop playing. That's the negativity, the negative voice in my head that tells me about or reminds me about how unworthy I have felt because of the violations. But this dude, when he keeps showing up in the same way and keep doing what he does, then I know. But I want to be really clear about something. God brought him to me when I was ready. And I was not ready until I started healing myself and seeking that healing.
Right.
There is a real connection between that. When you start taking care of yourself and you start doing you will see what's in place for you. He was put in place for me, and I was able to see it. That's how I stay hopeful.
That was good, Roxann. That was good. I think for me, I see hopeful in other people's eyes in a lot of ways. We're doing things with children and stuff like that. I see hope in their eyes, right? That's what I get. That's what I get back in a lot of ways. But I think it's about belief for me. You know what I mean? Knowing that other folks in my family have been through this and they were able to do great things, right? I'm hopeful because of my mother, Connie. And everything that she had been through. But she used her hands for magic when she did people's hands, did people's hair. And she used her love of life and extended that and blessed people as she did their perm and their color, which has people up until this day to say, Mom, my hair has never been the same since your mom stopped doing it. And it was 30 years ago. Yeah. And so I have that hope. But I think it also has something to do with me being Bayesian as well, because, my grandmother, some of my grandmothers used to say, we just keep pushing through. And, I don't know. Our people have been through so much, and we've created so much. It's hard not just be selfish and think about myself, but think about the ancestors that came before that fought for me to be here. So yes, be in my feelings for a second, but I got work to do. Yeah. And so that helps me in terms of hope. Beautiful. Thanks, Rox. But let's get into another question here. Why is it important for conversations around trauma and mental health important for science institutions to amplify?
That's a good question.
That's a good question, right? I can start real quick because I know you're going to jump in and be brilliant.
Yes, please do.
But I think it goes back to what you said about understanding and expanding people's minds about what science is, right? Behavioral science. Yeah. Right? And so for me, that's what I thought about it. Like the fact that James Monroe is doing this type of programming. Shout out to James Monroe. Give him a round of applause, please.
Shout out.
That's trying to expand museums' minds and also other folks that have science museums, their mind about how can we diversify the people that come here, but how can we also diversify the voices in science, right?
Yes.
Because they also had another podcast here that was of color scientists, right?
Yes.
We don't see that. So it's important that institutions like this start to think differently about how to use art, right? And how to tie art and science together to make it so it's not as stuffy as it used to be, it's not as privileged as it used to be, and that we are welcomed into a space like this to have these conversations. It's incredibly important, and we're going to be doing a panel coming up with at a museum, I believe, conference, and we're going to have this conversation across all the museums in the U.S. Thanks to James.
That's what's up. And it's not just stuffy. I mean, I'm going to speak from I'm considered a social scientist, right? What I do.
Yes.
And we have all these ideas about therapists.
Right.
Especially Black and brown communities.
Right.
But if you take it from being a social scientist, it makes a little bit more sense about why the Museum of Science and being here is so important and critical. And realistically, medical models and science has been saturated in white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And that has not included us, but what it has done is identified us as as deficits.
Right.
And that has been the historical context. And so doing something like this, it sort of provides information, different conversation, different communities.
Right.
It's almost like welcome to something different that includes you. That we want you here.
Right.
It's like that welcoming that a lot of our museums in Boston, let's keep it real, have not sort of felt motivated to do that.
Right.
And so I think that this brings to light that we can heal, that we've, defining trauma,
right.
That, a lot of people sometimes are like, you're a therapist? I'm like, yeah, and I swear, in therapy. Because I'm okay with that. Because I feel like it's important for me to be authentic. And if you tell me something that I think is crazy, that you've normalized, then I want to start swearing because I'm mad. I'm really mad. And I want to change that for you. And I want to change that perspective, right? That's what we're bringing. We're changing perspectives here.
Right.
In this place that we wouldn't have been welcome to.
Right.
That's real.
Right. I definitely, coming here as a child, I never knew they had a theater.
Well, I didn't grow up here, so I'm not even going to speak on that.
You grew up in New York.
I'm a New Yorker.
I had no idea. And some people said even the last live, they're like, wow, I didn't even know it was like a magic door. They had no idea that.
Oh, the door?
Yeah, the door. You never.
They didn't know what it was.
As a child, you never you're in the blue wing and you're playing around or whatever. You never like, I wonder what's behind
that door.
Right, behind that door. Right? It might have just been my mother telling me not to touch anything.
That's right. Don't touch nothing.
Right, because of course you get right. I always say it all the time. I'm West Indian. I was trained. I wasn't raised.
Puerto Ricans too.
Right.
We don't clean. We sanitize.
Right. I'm just saying. Right. Before you walk in, it's okay. Keep here's what it is. So I don't want you to touch nothing. I don't want you to talk to nobody. I don't want you to smile. I don't want you to do anything but hold my hand. You do anything besides that, you and I got problems here.
We like problems.
Right. So, that might have been part of it, but that's a great question. But it's always interesting when we get to the question and answer part, right? Because I feel like folks that have listened to our podcast, they don't ask us questions.
No,
right?
They hide.
They hide. It's very interesting that people hide. I'm sorry,
they hide.
But if I listen to Jack and the Muppets, I'm going to have a question. I would have questions.
I don't have any
us.
questions.
Right. I know you don't have any questions. But even with how we met and things like that, I expect people just to ask questions, right? The other thing that doesn't happen, which is unbelievable, is that people don't follow us on IG.
I don't know what that's about. I have no idea.
And some people don't think we're legit because we have 40 followers.
I mean,
no, we don't have that. We don't have that middle. I'm just saying 40 followers.
I mean, I'm not a social media kind of person. I don't really put a lot of value into that. You know what I put value into? The last time we did this podcast, the people that came and talked to me and spoke their truth. The people who said, my God, thank you for, you can clap. My God, thank you for helping me and talking to me. And then I run into them or they run into you and they say, I remember your wife, she talked to me. Oh my God, she was so right. That's what I care about. Yeah. Social media, like I'm happy about it in the sense because we reach a lot of communities, a lot of people. Right. But beyond that, those moments that we have with people are the men that come up to you and disclose. Yeah. And they never have before. Right. That's what matters.
Oh, no question. No question.
I'm good. You want to be 40? I'm okay with that. Because every single person matters to me.
Right. You know I wasn't serious about that, right?
Oh, no, I didn't know.
Okay.
Obviously, because I just went on like a soapbox.
Right, no, you went on a soapbox. I mean, I thought you were Stephen A. Smith for a second, but no, let me just stop at that. But here's another question. Do you have any suggestions on how to bring up mental health conversations at your school as a student, middle and high school? Which is a really good question. How do you bring up the conversation? That is a really good question.
I mean, I think, here's the thing. First of all, stay away from jargon. Right? Language is really important. Mm-hmm. Young people, everybody understands what it's like to have certain experiences. Right. And when we welcome people, I mean, one of the things that you've done really well is storytelling. Right? This is part of the work that you do with the monologue, right? You get people sort of speaking their narratives, their story. We call that narrative therapy in my world. In Black and brown communities, we call that stories, right? And passing the oral history. And when you sort of bring those indigenous ways of communicating and being with one another, because that's what we're doing in the podcast, right? We're talking to people, we're talking to each other, we're sharing. It's all about telling stories. And if you just normalize it as something very simple and don't worry about the jargon, people are going to speak whatever they needs to be spoken. Right. People just want to feel invited. Right. We just need to invite people. Right. It's simplistic. Yeah. Sometimes we don't invite people because we want to get caught up in all these bullshit about why we talk to people, we don't talk to people, we want to isolate, I don't like you, or this or that, but I have been known, especially in some of my jobs, I work with a lot of West Indians, and they very much want to look at you a certain way, and so I'm like this. And if you're still staring at me,
are you talking about the West Indian woman face?
Yes. And if you're still staring at me after I meet your eyeballs, I'm like this. Oh, you are looking at me.
Yeah. Or the West Indian scowl. The West Indian scowl, that is. They look at you like this.
And sometimes that
and they go, hi, sweetie. How you doing?
And when you speak to them and you love on them, they love you back.
Oh, no question. Yes.
But you have to break through some of these moments.
Yes.
And invite.
Yes, definitely.
And that doesn't happen.
Right. So thank you. Jumping on that, I think it's being comfortable, number one, with just having the conversation where you're talking to a teacher or whatever, and just expressing how you feel. I think it's important, bringing up the conversation. There's so many people, there's so many other students that are having the same type of thoughts and feelings that as a student, that we don't think like that as a student, we don't think everybody else in the room is having anxiety. Everybody else is having an issue with mental health in school, and I think it's important to understand that and start normalizing the conversation with your friends with how you feel, right? Yeah. Because I think that's important to do, but I think it's also important to try to figure out also the tools, right? How to breathe, how to meditate quietly, right? Whether you need to tap, sometimes, or play with something in your hand, and be honest with yourself first, and that will really help with the conversation.
We do a lot of that. I mean, In my work, we do a lot of that around group therapy, and a lot of the students are like, "Oh, no, I don't want to sit in a group." I hear a lot of people say that, but the value of group therapy is that you find out you are not alone in the first session.
Right.
And that in itself can be healing and therapeutic, and we don't think about it that way because we don't want to expose ourselves. But if we don't expose ourselves or we don't show up, then what we're doing is we're isolating. And isolation is extremely harmful when you're already struggling.
Right.
And we know how to do isolation really well.
Right.
And that is hurting us.
Yes. Thank you. Let's jump into these. We're going to do these rapid fire, okay? Because we have about 5 minutes left.
You're telling yourself that, right?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, so the next question comes from another person, and this is a good question too. How do you conceptualize codependency or trauma bonding and support each other or clients through that? That's a deep one. How do you conceptualize? Yeah.
You want to talk about the trauma bonding because we trauma bonded, right? Our trauma kids. Yes. So I'll say this really quick. We'll do this quickly. That's the one thing that we always talk about, like when we first met and things like that. Our trauma kids bonded, right? And so that was real for us for a first little part of our relationship. But then we started to realize that was not going to be enough. Right? We couldn't survive on that.
We couldn't survive on that, and that if we needed to be the adults as well. Have that bond. We knew we had that, but how could we grow together? Our trauma kids grew together because we started to do our individual work. And that made a huge difference in terms of, you started first, but that made a huge difference in terms of us not just having our trauma kids run the relationship, but to have the growing adults control the relationship.
Right, and sit the children down.
Exactly, and sit the children down.
No, I mean, like legitimately, we had to be like, oh, wait, sorry, that's little Roxy. That's not me.
No, right.
Sorry, my bad.
No, because that's important that we take care of our trauma kids inside of us, and sometimes we have to talk to them for them to sit down, right? Yeah. Because oftentimes what happens is when things get hard, especially for me as a survivor and whatever else, when my trauma kid is running things, I got problems. But regardless, me as a man is accountable.
Yes.
And so that's why I need to tell him to sit down.
Yes.
And that is not always easy.
Because we don't know how to, and we haven't learned, right? So I like this. We learn certain things from our people, our families, and relationships we've seen. And I learned on purpose because I want to keep the hope alive that we can unlearn it. Right? Unlearning that concept makes it accessible for us. Right. We can do this. Right. And I just want to say one line about the codependency. That is a term that, in my mind, is about how we overcompensate unnecessarily because we're trying to avoid something. And usually the avoidance is some version of not wanting to be rejected.
Right.
But what we're really doing is rejecting self. Am I making sense about that? Yeah. Okay. That's where that codependency comes from. And a lot of times codependency is related to people that have addictions that are our partners. So we fast pacing this.
No question. Thank you, Roxann. Like, you did brilliance in 5 seconds. Like, you're incredible. All right, so here's another question, really quickly. This is not a question, but Roxann, as a fellow social worker, I just vibe with you so much. You had me at Mother's Day being extra, not in a good way. And this is more of a comment, and I also follow you guys on IG.
Yay!
so I wanted to make sure, right? I wanted to make sure to get that one in. But okay, here's another one. How do you learn ways to embrace and work through feelings and emotion after trauma in relationships?
How do you, who, what?
Okay. How do you learn ways to embrace and work through feelings and emotions after trauma in relationships? And you have 30 seconds to go.
Listen, I just got trained EMDR. Go look it up. Look it up. It is the way for Black and brown people specifically because we experience racialized trauma every day, every minute, every second. Okay? And so while we're doing racialized trauma and experiencing all of this, then we're going to have all these other traumas happen at the same time. Nobody can handle that.
Right. Boom. Ting. I got you. All right. Here's the next one. Thank you, Roxann. So here's another one. I know forgiveness is more about you than others, but how do you take the next step to forgive others who have hurt you?
So I'm going to make the assumption that they continue to hurt you. I'm making that assumption in that question, which would mean to me that we need a pause and reevaluating what is this connection really about right here? Why do I need this connection? What are the benefits? What are the disadvantages? And the most important column, what do I want?
Right.
If you have to be able to figure out what brings you, like the Congresswoman talked about, joy.
Right.
What brings you joy? This man brings me joy. You know why? Because he's always making fun, making jokes, even when I don't want him to. Always. And I said to him very early on in our relationship, that day when you don't make me laugh, it will be time for me to exit this relationship.
I've been working on material, like, y'all don't even understand, like I gotta keep it fresh. I can't use the same joke twice. Like, do you know how many jokes I've had to create? Because I'm nervous. I'm like, man, if she don't laugh, I'm like, she gonna leave me.
I just want to say, he made this T-shirt, not me. I just wore it.
But you all, the next podcast, you will understand what that T-shirt means. But you know what? We are at time. You know what I'm saying? This has been really, really fun. Thank you so much to the people here at the Museum of Science. Thank you to James Monroe. Thank you to the technical team. Thank you to Breon. Thank you to DJ Bo Wilkie, who's in the house. And thank you all of you for coming. This is exciting, and we thank you, Keith Maskell. Man, the magic, it all comes from you. I just show up. Man, that's true though. You do. I know. I said it. I know. But to find more about the Trigger Project, please go to www.triggered1.com and find out about the other work that we do. We are so excited and just so blessed to be able to share our story on this platform to help others. That's what we're about. That's where we come from, and it's an honor to be here tonight with the Congresswoman, but it's also an honor to be here with you, baby, because without you, we don't have anything. So I just want to give it up to you, just with your brilliance. Y'all didn't have to clap for her. But let them clap. But please listen to us. Please listen to the podcast. We have one more episode before we end season 1, and then we'll be back for season 2. But I want to leave you with this, and then my friend James Monroe is going to come up and let you all know what's going to happen next. But remember this: you're no longer surviving. You're thriving.
Let's keep it going for Keith Maskell, Roxann Maskell, the Trigger Project. Thank you both for being here and sharing. You're two of my favorite people, and we just think everything you're doing is so important. So thank you for letting us host this conversation. Thank you to Congresswoman Pressley and her entire team for making the time to be here tonight. Thank you to all of you for joining us and spending your Thursday night with us here at the museum. We're going to say goodnight to our virtual friends, so thank you for tuning in. This link is going to stay active, so make sure you share this conversation, this important conversation, with everyone you know. know. You can continue to watch us online. And for all of you who joined us in person, we invite you to a reception one level down. The DJ is going to kick it back off. There's going to be snacks. Make sure you stick around to talk to these two incredible people. Have a great night.